Peace be upon you home. My name is Philin, I do not yihist. Everything said here is the personal opinion of the author, which does not claim your opinion or worldview. Let's take a look at the four generations of Ibn Khaldun from the perspective of governance and a bit of psychology. So, the first generation consists of people with high azrbia. It can be said, in Russian terminology, as passionality. All these are not identical concepts, azrbia relates to tribal cohesion, while passionality pertains to the individual. But in general, these are people accustomed to enduring hardships, making decisions, and taking action. People with high motivation, ambitions, and clear goals. They command seize power. They create a new state or reform an old one. The second generation expands and strengthens the state. This generation lives better but remembers the hardships their fathers went through, and therefore maintains high goals and ambitions. The third generation lives in prosperity and abundance. Gradually, it will assess its inner core and goal setting, engaged in science, art, and the development of a comfortable life, primarily for themselves. It no longer remembers the difficulties of the journey and lacks high passionality. The fourth generation simply degrades. It has no goals, no ambitions, and no inner drive. They simply waste their lives. Consequently, during this period, a new first generation emerges from the socialite desert. As we can see, the first generation has goals and ambitions, and even if it lacks knowledge, it acquires it and learns. The third and fourth generations simply enjoy life, become dull, and are subject to replacement. This is an important point for understanding both the thesis itself and what is happening today in the world. Ibn Khaldun's four generations essentially represent a sequence of actions. If in each case it was possible to tie to specific generations, in the modern world it is more a sequence of states and phases of the development of realities and systems. From the description, it is clear, those who have goals and ambitions at least seize and hold power, and those who lose their goals, ambitions, and passion gradually lose power. And others come to replace them. From the perspective of management theory, the managing system must be more complex than the managed one. That is, the elites must possess knowledge and skills sufficient to manage the system and implement its changes. Any system has a collective unconscious, an aggregate, which feeds on the energy of its participants and fights for its existence. And the larger the aggregate, the greater its power. Many of you have seen the liquidation of enterprises and understand how this happens. But these are relatively small systems, their power is not that great. However, large supersystems are already capable of forming informational fields, moods, and trends aimed at replacing realities that are unable to manage. At the same time, this does not guarantee the preservation of the system itself. We saw this in 1991 with the example of the Soviet Union. Much depends on the elements of the system, their state, and level of awareness, for each civilization on the planet a specific way of changing realities has developed. For the Atlantic civilization, this method is revolution and civil war. And here it is important not to confuse. A revolution is not always no present, and a civil war is not always accompanied by combat actions, nor does it always look like a class war of oids and threats that can also be bloodless substance. As an example, let's consider the United States. In 1776, the separation of the United States from the British Empire occurs, essentially, a civil war and a change of realities. In 1861, just 4 generations later, the system faces a crisis again, another civil war, another change of realities. Previously, according to the law of time, such changes often led to large wars. Let's recall France and the British Empire. But with the acceleration of historical processes, the next civil war in the United States primarily takes place bloodlessly, lasting from 1929 to 1944. And now in the United States of America, a civil war is again underway, For now, bloodless Donald Trump, who has come to power, is launching a new cycle of reality change. Modern elites have learned to manage without military actions and to smooth out financial catastrophes by stretching term over years. For the Russian Empire, regardless of its name in different years, a different type of reality change has historically developed. It can be designated by the term опричнина, referring to the historical name of Ivan the Terrible's struggle against the boyar aristocracy. Then there were police cups, followed by the events of 1917-1939 and 1953. Finally, there was the Yelknon reality change of 1991-1993, which, in essence, is still not complete. In the modern world, under the conditions of accelerating events and increasing connectivity, unlike Ibn Khaldun's model, new elites do not always come to power from the desert, those who possess goals and ambitions. Thus, in Russian civilization during 1991-1993, it was not new passionati elites that came to power, but groups whose main goal was the plundering of the country. They came to power with the help of external support and foreign influence, and worked in the interests of those who brought them to power. Such elites could not build a new state. They were not psychologically prepared for this. Moreover, they could not withstand another fundamental requirement of management theory. For development, the system must, firstly, withstand environmental pressure, and secondly, master its development potential. Elites without goals, without ambitions, without knowledge and skills are unable to withstand environmental pressure. They are brought to power precisely for the liquidation of the system, and this process is stretched over time, as systems have internal stability. In 1917, we saw a different situation, replacing those who came to power on the wave of the February Revolution. In October, elites from a conditional desert came, more passionati, with goals and a project. In the 21st century, the process has dragged on the keys, undoubtedly. Over the past 30+ years, ambitious and goal-oriented elites with knowledge and management skills have largely come to power, led by the president. However, a significant portion is still represented by the heirs of the elites of the 90s. The long duration of changes is the price for the bloodless transition and the absence of major social upheavals. And since the process of elite replacement has not been completed, it continues to this day. Right now, a turn for the better is emerging. A significant part of the new elites is being formed today in the special military operation zone among people who have a goal, motivation, and a willingness to take responsibility. Similarly, in the United States and Europe, elites have largely lost their ability to govern. There are plenty of examples, from some White House press secretaries to individual prime ministers of the United Kingdom and leaders of EU institutions. Meanwhile, they feel warm and comfortable in their seats, and they have no intention of leaving in its time. There was macro of the not very competent, in managerial terms, Margaret Thatcher, who looked poorly against the backdrop of the political giants of that time, such as Helmut Kohl or Francis Mitterrand, and she was even ridiculed in a series of James Bond films, compared to modern EU politicians. In the essay, the process of elite change has already begun. It's Europe's turn. There will be many events. It's a pity that some of them may turn out to be bloody, but this is the choice made by the population through its inaction and unwillingness to take responsibility. As we can see, Ibn Khaldun's thesis has not lost its relevance. However, with the development of a society, according to the law of time, it has acquired new features. And it is precisely the moral and intellectual degradation, the lack of passionality and goals among the elites that becomes the basis for their replacement, or the reason for the collapse of the entire system. Peace to you at home. Until we meet again.